so I just chiseled all the bark off. It was really tough, but I was able to do it just by hand. Now I'm gonna go over with some sandpaper to try to remove the last of this soft material, just so I'm directly attaching the epoxy to the wood. So I'm gonna quickly go through and sand as much of that off as I can. Then I'm gonna trim it up and we'll go upstairs and start pouring some epoxy. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch my video. I really appreciate it. If you've made it this far, again, thank you. As I'm putting together the video, I decided, I'm going to end the video with me saying a few comments on what I learned from this project, what I wish I would have done differently, and what I wish I would have known before I began. So I'm basically going to go over a few things that I would suggest to anyone that was starting to do an epoxy project. The first one's going to be the scale of the project. I think it's a lot better to begin on a smaller project. Basically begin on the smallest project that will be useful to you. For me, I began with a 96 inch by like 44 or 43 inch table, so a huge table. That was a horrible idea. And the reason with that is it takes a lot of epoxy. The epoxy is not cheap, so if anything happens, you're either going to lose out on all that money on the epoxy, or you're going to have to live with a huge mistake. So definitely, for me, I wish I would have started with like a cutting board or an end table, something that I could use, but say if it goes bad, I only lost a gallon of epoxy or so. The next one is, really read the directions of the epoxy really well. I skimmed through it and I missed one key point in it. Don't overmix the epoxy. Overmixing the epoxy is going to cause it to set off really fast. And the issue with that is it may set off before you want it to. And when I mean set off, it hardens. So for me, I overmixed it and it started hardening right away. It started steaming and it got really hot. So the only luck I had in the whole situation is I wasn't quite all the way full yet. I was about 75–80%. So it bubbled a lot, it set off really quickly, and it didn't set off evenly. But the only luck I had is I still had about a 1/4 inch to 3/8 inch to go to the top. So while it bubbled a lot and it wasn't even, I was able to quickly sand it down and then do a second pour where I really read the directions carefully, and this time I had all the time in the world. My first attempt at the first pour of epoxy, I poured about 10, 11, 12 gallons, I forget exactly how much, and it set off in about 15 minutes, so it's almost fully hard in about an hour. The second pour, I mixed it just enough to incorporate everything, the hardener and the epoxy, part A and part B, where it's 100% incorporated, and it didn't fully set off for about 3 days. So that's the time window there. So definitely, the second point is don't overmix it. The third point is don't begin with white. Begin with a dark color, something that can really hide imperfections really well. White's a really hard color to work with. My main career is in engineering. I do research as an engineer, but I also do contracting with my dad nights and weekends, and I mainly do hard top counters, granite, marble, quartz, porcelains. And the one thing I tell customers is, hey, the white quartz is going to have a slight premium to it because at me and my dad's shop, we for white quartz we put in huge pieces. Huge pieces creates a lot of waste, so they're going to have to cover the cost of the waste because it's really hard to make a really good white seam where you combine two white counters because white shows everything. So maybe for your first one, if you're going to do an epoxy project, begin with black, brown, like a solid color other than white, just because white will show everything. If dust gets in there, maybe the white's not mixed as nice, like the color ratios, how much white pigment you add to it's not as nice, it's going to show everything. So start with a dark color where you can kind of hide the imperfections, because you're going to have imperfections the first time you do it. I certainly do. By no means is my table perfect. I'm really happy with the outcome. That's just because I got so lucky on my first pour that because I knew I had to do a second pour. So I was able to hide 95% of the imperfections. There's still imperfections in it, even right now. They're just not noticeable unless you see them. So I got really lucky. I would definitely recommend start with a darker color. And then, most importantly, have fun with it. Make a project that's to your scale. Don't have it be a burden. For me, it ended up becoming a slight burden because it was so big. Had a total took about close to 20 gallons of epoxy. That's about $1,000. I was heavily invested in this, so I knew I was going to have to see it through the end. This wasn't a project where I could stop and start over. So make sure the most important thing I think is have fun with it. Make it what you want it to become, and good luck. I hope you guys try. If you make something, post a video on it. Let me know in the comments. I usually always check out the videos viewers leave in my comments because my channel is small, so I have the time. I really appreciate you watching my video. If you don't mind, subscribe. What do you have to lose? I really appreciate it. Thank you.